Ravi, thank you. So you cite a rising debt, and you also, of course, cite the bailout of Eskom. You don't cite SAA, which we know also the government is in the market for. When you take out those two things, are there other things perhaps that the government is doing right that it can build on so it can tackle those two big issues?
Yeah, I mean, at the heart of the negative outlook is the issue of the rising debt and the deteriorating fiscal story that we saw in the MTBPS. And that was driven on the one side, on the revenue side, it was low growth, which then impacted the tax revenue. And on the expenditure side was the large transfers that went to Eskom, which were, in addition to what they had planned in the budget last year. So, you know, we see debt, the government's debt trajectory climbing up now on a net debt basis, if we net of assets to close to 70% of GDP. So a significant weakening, and that has driven us to put South Africa on negative outlook.
Yeah, those numbers where the government is projecting that its debt to GDP ratio is likely to climb to 70%, are those credible numbers? Do you believe them? Are they also your numbers?
Yes, I mean, we're largely on the same page. I mean, the question is what is going to happen in next year's budget?
Yeah.
Because, of course, the MTBPS is just a statement of the medium term, but the real money moves with the budget. So whether we'll have to see whether there's going to be any new taxation efforts, whether VAT is going to come in, and also whether they're able to control the wage bill and get some savings on the wage side, and you know whether they can halt this deteriorating debt trajectory as it stands in the budget.
Yeah. So when you look up to that 2020 budget, Ravi, what's likely to happen now in terms of your rating of South Africa? Because you have lowered the outlook now. The next step in that, if there's further deterioration, is a cut. What kind of conditions do you think would necessitate a cut of your credit rating of South Africa's rating going forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, the negative outlook is at least a 1 in 3 chance of a downgrade within the next year or so.
Okay.
That's what it broadly speaks to. I mean, we'll obviously look at the fiscal story, the extent of deterioration, the rising interest costs, and whether there's going to be more crystallization of contingent liabilities tied potentially to Eskom or, as you mentioned, SAA. But SAA is relatively small vis-a-vis Eskom in terms of the debt metrics. And whether we see on the revenue side, whether we see a rebound in growth or a slight improvement in growth, which then helps the revenue numbers. So, I mean, those are the things we're going to be looking.
And when you consider all those things, and you raise some pretty scary things that when I was listening to you at the beginning, such as the potential of an increase in taxes and a potential increase in VAT, how likely are those, given the economic environment that is in South Africa at the moment? And sorry, to add on to that question, I wanted to know if you're projecting any kind of pickup in growth next year that perhaps would help the numbers move the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the core of this fiscal problem is actually the growth story and the lack of growth. And again, you know, a significant, across the board, not only us, but other analysts and even the government, a significant downward revision to growth year, right? And we're looking at only about 0.6%. So we are actually projecting a significant improvement next year to 1.6%, but which is higher than you know, even some of the other commentators. But if we look at it on a per capita basis, it really means that there's no per capita growth in South Africa. And we haven't seen, we've seen deteriorating per capita incomes for several years now. So at the heart of the problem is the growth story and the inability for that South Africa really hasn't seen a turnaround in the growth story for a few years.
Absolutely, absolutely, Ravi. Thank you very much indeed. And as he says, at the heart of the matter is the growth story, and we know the growth story is more to do with ability of the government and therefore the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa to get the country out. Thank you. He is a director at S&P Global.